towards the bottom, and 1 second, yeah, 94b towards the bottom. Kiha Demar Zutra, 8 lines from the bottom, 10 lines. Breder of Nachman Havikazel Mesichra Lebei Mechuza. So we just mentioned this idea of sometimes people misinterpret things on their own, and not that you trick them. So a story to prove that is that Mar Zutra was traveling from Sichra to Beit Mechuza. So he was leaving Sichra. Meanwhile, Rav Safra also was Sichra. They came to Sichra. So he was leaving locale A, and people were coming to that locale, and they met each other in the middle. He thought they came to greet him. He was all honored. Amar lahu, lama lahu l'rabbanim d'shroach v'asu kulei hai. He's like, listen, why did you guys come all the way to see me? Why did you put so much effort in to come and greet me? Now, they weren't coming to greet him. They happened to be traveling in the same, opposite direction. So they met in the middle. We actually had no idea that master was coming. If we would have known you'd be coming, we would have exerted more effort. So our lay Rava, my time why did you say that? He's gonna feel bad. You made the guy feel bad. He thought you came out for him. And you're like, nope, we didn't come for you. Why would you say that? Amar lay, the hakamatin lay. He said, what was wrong with saying that? I didn't say anything wrong. I didn't. We didn't. If we didn't tell him, he would have thought that. If we didn't tell him, he would have had the wrong impression that we went out to greet him. So I told him so he shouldn't think that we went out of our way to greet him, and then he would have like a debt of gratitude towards us. So to that the response is no. We didn't tell him we're coming to greet him. He came to his own conclusion. So the fact that we were traveling and saw him, and he concluded that we're coming to greet him, that's his own mistake. So there's no problem of falsely, giving someone a false impression. He saw someone he knew and came to the conclusion that they're coming to greet him. So therefore, it's another example of a guy comes to his own conclusion, not that we're tricking him at all. So he thought, what do you mean? I had to tell him, because if not, he'll think that we're coming to greet him. To that, the response of Rava is, no, that doesn't count. That doesn't count as tricking somebody, because he came to his own conclusion. Yeah. Okay. Now, there was a shochet that told his friend. He told him, so one guy tells his enemy, two guys are in a fight, basically. They don't see eye to eye with each other. But one guy's a shochet, so he's starting to a little bit trash talk his friend, so to speak. So listen, if we would have been on good terms, so I would have given you from that awesome the fattened ox that I slaughtered yesterday. So that's what Reuven says, let's say, right? So Shimon says back to him, Amrlei, Achli mishufri shufri. Mishofri shufri. Shimon says, I had the best part of that ox. So Reuven's like, how did you get the ox that I slaughtered? Amrlei minon. Amrlei, Dizavan Ploni, over Kochavim, Visafali. He said that you sold it to a non-Jew, and he gave it to me, so I bought it from him. So one guy tells the other, if we would have been on better terms, you got the best meat that I slaughtered. And the guy answers back, I had some. You sold it to the non-Jew sold it to me, and I got it. So now the guy says back, Amrlei, the Zavin Ploni, Trey Avade. No, he said, no, you don't understand. I actually slaughtered two, and the one that you bought from the non-Jew was a treifa, was a non-kosher animal, so you ate not kosher. So, so that was the story between these two people. So now, one second. Oh, so now 1 second. So it's not finished yet. Sorry. So the guy says that yesterday he slaughtered something, but it was a treifa. So now, that was yesterday though. Today, Amar Rebbe Bishvil Shota Zeh She'asa Shelo Kahogan Anu Nesar Kol Amukolin. Amukol is like a marketplace. So Rebbe responds. He said, because of this fool, we're going to close down the marketplace. Meaning, just because the guy claims that he shechted something yesterday and it was a treifa, that doesn't prohibit today us buying stuff in the marketplace. Like Rashi points out, most of the slaughterers there are Jewish. So just because of this story doesn't mean that the guy was prohibited from buying meat the next day. Yeah. Now this was Rebbe's statement, and this is Rebbe goes according to his own reasoning that Rebbe Latame, the Amar Mekulin, the Tavche Yisrael, you have a marketplace where there are non-Jews selling, and you also have Jewish shochtim, many Jewish shochtim, and non-Jewish sellers of meat. So what happens? Basar hanimtza biyad obed kochavim mutter. Any meat you find that's being held by the non-Jew is permitted. Why? Rashi says the basar of tavachim azlinon. You go after the majority of the slaughter. Who are the majority of the slaughterers? Yankel, Shmerel, they're Jews. The basar of tavachim azlinon. Uletarfa leikalamechash. There's no need to worry just because there are non-Jewish salesmen. You don't have to worry that there's not kosher food there if most of the slaughterers are Jewish. Yeah. So any meat you find that's in the non-Jew's hands is permitted. So that's one. Another version of what Rebbe said is, Amar Rebbe showed this because of this fool who slaughtered, and there was a treifa because of this back and forth story. The because of the fact that the guy tried to just trash talk his friend. Anu Nesar Kol Amukolin. So this version is, it sounds like the first version was we took him seriously. He actually slaughtered a treifa. He slaughtered an animal, it was a treifa, and sold it to a non-Jew. But that's not enough to prohibit all the meat in town. This version is saying that he's just sort of like trash talking him. He's sort of trying to badmouth him. And because he's trying to badmouth him, we're going to prohibit everyone from buying meat. So the Gemara says, the inference is from this version, time of the chavin letzure lechavre, but halav hachiaser. We're only going to permit the guy that bought the meat the next day, from this non-Jew who bought meat from Ruvain. So we're only going to say that it's only because he tried to badmouth him that he said, "Oh, I checked the meat and it was treif." But we don't believe the guy. We just think he's trash talking. He's bad mouthing his friend. But if not for that, it sounds like it'd be prohibited. If not for that, then any meat you find would be prohibited, not permitted. And that's a question. How does that work? So we said, Rebbe says that any place that's selling meat, when the rove of the slaughterers are Jews, just because there are non-Jews that are selling there, the meat you find is permitted. It's not only permitted if some guy's we see that he's not telling the truth, he's trying to badmouth his friend because they're not on good terms. We see in general, when the majority of slaughterers are Jews, so then even if they're non-Jews there, you can assume the meat that was brought from them is totally fine, totally permitted. So says the Gemara, the reason why that version of the story said that when you're bad-mouthing your friend, it's going to be permitted, but everywhere else is going to be prohibited. Shiny hacha, the ischazik isura. Ischazik isura means that that it's a treifa. So meaning once you have in this case, the reason why we're worried about the guy, so let's say like this, Ruvain hates Shimon. So Ruvain is a shochet, and Christopher is selling meat at the market. So Ruvain sells meat, and Shimon buys it. The next day they get into a fight. Ruvain tells Shimon, if we were on good terms, you'd had my 5-star steak. So Shimon's like, I actually had some. I bought it from your guy yesterday. I bought it from Chris yesterday. So Ruvain tells him, yeah, I did 2 slaughterings yesterday, and the one you bought was from a non-kosher animal. It was a treifa. So we say, well, we just see that he's bad-mouthing him, and therefore the meat is permitted, not prohibited. So we're asking now, but in general, meat that's found by a non-Jew is permitted as long as the majority of the slaughterers are Jews. So the answer the Gemara gave was shiny hakadis chazik yisur, meaning once the guy admitted that one time he sold a treifa to the non-Jew, so now we have reason to assume he might have done it again. In general, if you find it by any other non-Jew, we have no reason to assume that he was sold any non-kosher meat because most of the shoftim are Jews, and therefore they know that Jews are going to buy for this meat. They'll never give a non-kosher animal to the non-Jew. But since Reuven is already on the books as admitting to giving a treifa to a Christopher, so now further meat from this guy, Christopher, is going to be a problem. And that's all the Gemara is saying. So in general, the rule of thumb stays true. It's permitted. This case is prohibited. Amar Rav is a very well-known, not well-known, but a very important law that comes up. It's always talked about when you leave your seat on the airplane with your food and you come back, how is it permitted to eat it? So what's the problem? This Gemara. Amar Rav, basar, meat. Kevan shenis alam and ayin, aser. Meat that leaves your sight. You lost it, meaning not you lost it, but you took your eyes off of it. Even if it's sitting on your table, it's prohibited because maybe somebody switched it with non-kosher meat. So, yeah. So Meisvei on this halacha, that meat that is, you take your eye off of it, and now we have a worry that maybe it got switched with non-kosher meat. We have the following problem. Meisvei Rebbe Omer Mekulim Mitapke Sol Kosher, but Mekulim Mitapke Sol Basar, sorry, Mekulim Mitapke Sol, you have a bunch of non-Jews and a bunch of Jewish slaughterers, and they give it to the non-Jew sells it. So, Basar and him to be Yado Beit Kochavim Mutter. If you found the meat in the hands of the idolater, it's permitted because you assume that most of the Jews selling meat there, majority of them are Jews, the slaughterers. Therefore, it's permitted. But if you say, so the question is, 1 second, meat that got into the hands of an idolater, 1 second, you for sure took your eye off of it. I mean, at some point you gave it to him and then you left. So how could any Jew buy meat from him? Didn't it leave his periphery? So we say, nimtza biyad oved kochavim shiny, that when it was in the hands of the non-Jew, it's different. Why is it different? So Rashi says it's considered like it's watched, meaning that the non-Jew didn't shecht it, and the guy didn't give him non-kosher meat. So once the guy's holding it, so then we're not going to assume it's more like a safe place. Once you gave it to the seller already, so then we're not going to assume that the seller is going to mess with it. We know the non-Jew didn't slaughter it, and we know the non-Jew didn't sell you a treifa. Why do we assume that? Because that's, I guess, we go after the majority. We only are worried when we saw it and then we took our eye off of it. So if you saw it and then you took your eye off it, Rashi says that maybe the birds came and they switched it. They brought in meat from somewhere else and they switched it. But so If you know that he has it, so then you're not going to assume that he switched it. The whole worry is when you're watching it and you take your eyes off of it. So now we think that maybe it got switched. Is there a footnote about it? I don't know. Why don't we assume that he sold you non-kosher meat? Because we go after the majority. We don't assume that. One second. Right. We're not worried about him switching it. We're worried that well, sometimes we might be, but in this case, when you have a situation where the Jew gives the meat to the non-Jew, so the worry is that if you take your eye off of it, so then maybe the birds will switch it. But we don't assume that when it's by somebody else. You don't have to worry about that. Maybe he took his eye off of it. That far we don't have to go. So when you give it to the non-Jew, considered safeguarded by the non-Jew. Fine. But in general, if you have meat and you take your eye off of it, so we're worried that maybe birds came and switched it. Let's stop here. I apologize. I'll have to make up a little bit of lost ground. Okay.